This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Manny. That's Downrigger Dale, as Manny just said. Thank you for the introduction, sir. And we are here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Thanks so much for all of you for joining. Today, I don't get into a lot of politics or controversial stuff all the time, but now and then when something gets a little stuck in my craw, I will get after it. And there's one now that is really bugging me. And it's not only bugging me, but bugging a lot of you. I got a lot of emails from you folks saying, hey, I don't know if I agree with this. What I'm talking about is what a federal judge did here recently about the wolf trapping season. And we're going to get into that. Whatever side you're on, you're welcome to email me. I'll be reading your emails after this podcast and get your thoughts. But this is something that can actually go even further than just wolf trapping, in my opinion. But what we're doing is I've got the communications director from the Montana Trappers Association on. That is Ed Hebbe. Ed has been doing quite a bit of work on this, and of course, a lot of other things that he works on for the Montana Trappers Association. So, Ed, first of all, thank you so much for coming on the Montana Outdoor Podcast with me. And second of all, why don't you first just start, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, it's good to be here with you, Dale. Let's see here. I've been involved with the Montana Trappers Association for quite a bit of my life, I guess you could say, and everything. Back in the 80s and all, Dad got involved with the Trappers Association, and I just kind of come along with him. We went over to the rendezvous and that in Lewistown at the time, and then eventually I went into the Air Force, and I was gone for a few years and come back, and then I got gradually drugged back into it, if you would say. Let's see here. And then at that time, Dad was been a district director. He ended up being vice president West, and I think at that time the recording secretary decided to step down, and I stepped in there and ended up being the recording secretary for the association for a couple years. And then Dad ended up being president of the association, and I stayed on with that. And then eventually became the membership secretary and kind of stepped back from all of that because I got busy with my business and, of course, working and whatever else. And then I also ended up putting a website together for the MTA because I noticed a need for all of that. So these days I take care of our website information. I take care of our Facebook. I'm the editor for our Montana Trapper magazine. So I keep everybody pretty well lined out in the association as to upcoming events, what they need to do, what I need, and so on and so forth of that nature. So I'm kind of I suppose you could say, the in-between people, one of the in-between individuals that at least ways keeps things moving along and flowing nicely and all that. Our Vice President West says that I am the glue that keeps the association together. I don't know if I'm much on the glue part, but I do keep people lined out and rolling when it comes to day-to-day situations or situations that do come up.
Right. Well, and that I agree with him. Someone that directs that communication is definitely the glue, especially when situations like this come up where people really need to know and understand what's happening out there. Now, for some of you out there let's start here first. For a lot of you that are listening, you may not know, because we get so many new podcast listeners, that when you found this podcast, you probably saw the podcast description. If you look down towards the bottom of the description, there's going to be a bunch of links, and I'll have links there for you to the Montana Trappers Association website that Ed just mentioned, and that. So that way you can have links and look at it and get more information about it. So, Ed, what some people, I think, that maybe are not active, in the outdoors of Montana, or even there are some hunters in that don't really quite understand how trapping has evolved from, the old days when it really wasn't regulated much to, nowadays. Trapping serves a very important purpose, especially in helping, the FWP and other biologists and that get information, and also just with population control of a lot of different predators out there. What are some of the misconceptions that you often hear from people that don't understand the trapping industry?
Well, one of the biggest things that everybody hears about, it's cruel and inhumane and it's archaic. Mm-hmm. No, it isn't. If anybody that has lived in a house that has ever had a rodent infestation, mice or whatever, if you've ever set a mouse trap, you are a trapper, whether you want to believe that or not.
Good point. Yeah.
Trapping is an essential tool for species management. People don't understand, for instance, like the wolf. The wolf came from Canada. What did they do? They went up there and they trapped the wolf with a foothold trap, and they brought them down to Montana into Yellowstone National Park, where they basically got them acclimated and they let them go. The wolf is one of those species that, of course, is populated in Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, now into Washington and Oregon, and down into Utah, thanks to trapping. If it wouldn't have been for the trapping, they couldn't use live traps, because the wolf is a very particular critter to begin with. And anybody that thinks that they're going to go out there and just throw a trap somewhere and specifically target and capture a wolf has got a lot of educating of himself to get done. But also trapping in regards to that, to the wolf, we are currently, and have been the past couple years, been working with FWP to trap marten out of down there around the Immigrant area out of Region 3, and we've been moving them up into some other mountain ranges and all that, and that has been very successful into areas where whether or not they were originally there or not is hard to say, but now we got, at least he's working on a population there, so at some point in time they will be available for trapping to you just take off the cream of the crop, if you want to call it that. You're just taking out some of them and all that, because you just don't want an overabundance and overpopulation of anything, because anybody that understands anything in regards to wildlife management, these things can't manage themselves, and wildlife is cruel if it is not managed by man.
Yeah, that you're hitting all the spots for me too, and that's where I'm so glad you brought up the fact that that the wolf wouldn't even have got repopulated in Montana had it not been for trapping to do that. And that's the case with a lot of species. For example, the swift fox was almost completely wiped out. In fact, Montana at one point in time listed it as extinct in the state of Montana, and then they started showing up again as they came down from Canada. And trappers were very instrumental in helping then get the swift fox repopulated to certain areas using live traps and such to put them back, which they have been great at controlling, gophers and all that. But again, swift fox can cause some problems if that population isn't controlled. So, trapping goes way beyond just, getting some nice fur. It really is essential at kind of helping biologists and that maintain a balance in nature. So that is key. And whether you agree with the wolf coming back into Montana, people kind of are on both sides of that. I grew up on a ranch, and wolves were not a popular idea. And when they came back to Montana, I certainly was not on the side of saying, hey, that's a great idea. But nevertheless, they're here. But now that they are here, wolves can repopulate very rapidly. And that's where the trapper comes in. So now here we are. We've been trying to use trapping to help balance nature with that. The Montana legislature said, we're looking at both sides, and believe me, they heard all different sides of the argument, decided that needed to be expanded more. Wolf hunting, trapping, and that needed to be expanded more because there was a lot of evidence that started to come out as far as not only livestock damage, but also damage to elk herds, deer, so on and so forth. So that got expanded. Now, of course, we elect our legislators, and then they hear from all different things, and they represent us and make those laws. So off we go. So now, tell us what happened here recently. So the wolf trapping season was about to start, and then what happened, Ed?
All right, you're back in, I got to think here a minute. That was in the legislative session of 21. We legislature ended up passing a bill where wolf trapping could start happening right after hunting season, the Monday after hunting season, which technically would have been the 27th, this past Monday, and would have run all the way until March 15th. The FWP Commission does have the oversight in regards to that, and they can kind of decide whether or not they're going to allow that at that time or not, and restrict it for a little bit depending upon weather conditions or activity from grizzly bears, that sort of thing. The main thing here is we got these animal rights activists. They're more concerned about filling their pockets with money and not presenting actual statistics and facts in regards to all of this type of stuff. And the grizzly bear and the wolf is one of their greatest money-making schemes ever.
Well,
and right now they're playing, one against the other. However,
let me jump in for just a second,
okay,
just so we can kind of bring folks along that may not understand how the grizzly bear's even involved in this. So I want to just jump in there on that. What was the concern? Because I think that's where some people that don't follow this regularly kind of scratch their head and say, "No, wait a minute, what do grizzly bears have to do with the wolf trapping thing?" What was the concern there? And one other point I want to make before we go on to the next thing is that when you talk about the commission, what they do, if I understand this right, and correct me if I'm wrong, is they get data from FWP guys and gals out in the field to say, okay, this district here has harvested X amount of wolves. That's probably enough for that population, so they can change things to restrict that, and then, like you say, weather and that. So how does the grizzly bear come into play in this whole deal?
The grizzly bear comes in under the Endangered Species Act. This past legislative session in 23, of course, the legislature, they passed some guidelines of what they want to do in hopes that the grizzly bear gets delisted so that Montana can manage that specific species just like we do the wolf. But being that it hasn't been delisted at this time, of course, the animal rights activists, they are in there poking and prodding and trying to come up with anybody that will listen to them and their arguments. And what had happened is is a possibility that a grizzly bear might get caught or captured in a snare, in a foothold trap. However, ever since 2013, when we started managing the wolf in this state, trapping and hunting, there has been only one instance in 10 years of a grizzly bear ever getting caught in a trap somewhere along the line, and that bear was released unharmed.
Okay, now, Ed, I got a couple questions there. So, first question, aren't grizzly bears hibernating now? That's the first question. Second question is, how would a wolf trap really hurt a grizzly bear? Because I've seen, videos, and actually one time actually out in the wild, which scared the heck out of me. I've seen two grizzly bears fight, and that looks way rougher than stepping in a trap or a snare. So answer those two questions for me.
What was the first one again? My mind went blank.
First question is, aren't grizzly bears hibernating now?
Correct. They are supposed to be hibernating, but past couple of years we've had quite a few of them out and roaming around just because the weather has been, fairly decent and everything. I mean, you take this year right now. This time last year we were cold and they were starting to den up, but this time of the year, this year, they are still out and active, and that's just the way that the weather goes in Montana. One year we can have a really bad winter, and another year it can be warm and beautiful like it is this year. Same with the hunting season. There was really no snow, no cold, no nothing. So that plays into the situation. So basically what they're doing is they're just getting themselves all wound up, per se, in hoping that they can prevent the trapper from going out and managing these wolves, because they're assuming they're putting a fear into people that, you might catch one of those things out there. Yes, there is that possibility, but there's also a possibility you driving down the highway and getting a flat tire.
Right. So that kind of goes into my second question, which is, okay, let's say, and again, the way that trappers trap wolves, and we'll get into that. You can kind of explain how it's set up to make it even more unlikely that a grizzly bear gets into that. But like I said, I have seen grizzly bears do some pretty amazing things. Well, for example, I saw one, we were watching it from afar, but he moved a boulder to get after some what do you call those things? The little critters that hide underneath the boulders there.
Oh, you mean the grubs and all that type of stuff?
And the marmots and stuff like that.
Right.
And after he left the scene, we went down. There was 4 of us. We could not even budge that boulder, so they're incredibly strong. And also, I had the good fortune or not of seeing 2 male grizzly bears fight. Man, that is a violent fight. Oh. So how is it that a wolf trap, something that would hold a wolf, which is way, way smaller than a grizzly bear, how would a grizzly bear get injured or killed by a wolf trap. That's the part I'm a little confused with here as part of that whole argument of why the wolf trapping season needed to be cut basically in half because of the concern that a bear might get in a wolf trap. So how would they get injured in that case?
Honestly, the size of those critters, I mean, even if the possibility of them stepping in and getting that thing on their foot, basically, and it's just going to be above their toes. And for the most part, they can just pull right out of those things and be on their way. But we've all seen some of the videos that do occur and happen on YouTube where a bear does get itself caught, and some of them are pretty wild. I wouldn't even want to get near one of those things. But like I said, the possibility of that really honestly happening is pretty slim and far between. And furthermore, anybody that's going to go out and wants to be doing trapping for wolves are not purposely setting for a grizzly bear. We don't want to catch those.
No.
The individual person doesn't want to catch, the trapper out there does not want to go out there and catch that thing. And what they do is they go back to the Endangered Species Act under the take provision and all that, because basically what has happened, if you were to catch one of those things in a trap and it gets released, it'll be released unharmed. They still would fall under, you took that animal out of commission, if you want to put it down. That's not quite the words I want to use, but they are using it under the definition of take in regards to that. You have taken that animal is what it is, even though it hasn't been.
Well, Ed, we're going to take a quick break here and hear from one of our sponsors. And when we come back, I've got one more question, and thank you for humoring me with these questions, but you know, some of them just get a little out there, and I think, wait a minute, and I need to understand this. Plus, I'm also kind of going off some of the questions I got from emails and stuff from people too. So hang on, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. I want to talk a bit about a very special company located in western Montana, Superior Hardwoods of Montana. They were established in 1977, and since that time, guiding customers through the woods has been their passion throughout their history. The main focus at Superior Hardwoods of Montana has been to provide the finest wide plank flooring and unique building materials available anywhere. One of the things I noticed right away about the owner of Superior Hardwoods of Montana, John Medliger, and his son Corey, and the rest of the staff there is they're very proud to offer the largest selection of in-stock flooring in the western United States. See, for over 40 years, they've been known for leading the industry in reclaimed and antique building materials, and the success that followed has allowed them to, now get this, stock over 11 acres of stunning architectural lumber that awaits the perfect addition to your home. One thing I want you to remember is just because they're located in Missoula, Montana, that does not mean they can't help you turn your home into a piece of historical art if you live somewhere else. They have been guiding folks from as far away as Hawaii and beyond through the woods for many years. So no matter if your project is located across the street from them, across the state, or somewhere else in the world, they can't wait to turn your house into a dream home. Their goal is simple. They stand ready to deliver the best choices with reliability and honesty, helping at any phase of a project with inspirational advice. And I'm not exaggerating when I say they actually treat their customers as friends and family. So the choice is yours. But if I were you, I would go to superior-hardwoods.com. superior-hardwoods.com. Of course, you're more than welcome to call them, 406-235-7452, or, they'd love you to visit 5120 Highway 93 just south of Missoula, Montana. They can't wait to guide you through the woods at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. Go see them. You're going to love what they do to your home. And we are back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. I'm talking with Ed Hebbe, and he's with the Montana Trappers Association, and we're talking about this controversial decision made by Federal Judge Molloy about basically cutting the wolf trapping season in half. So, Ed, one of the other questions I had then, and we were talking about, well, could a wolf trap really hurt a bear? And that is, okay, so let's say, well, in fact, let me back up a little. So far in Montana, once in 10 years, there was a grizzly bear, and you touched on this, that got into a wolf trap. What happened to that bear specifically that you know of?
Well, I don't know if it was in a wolf trap or if it was in a coyote trap.
Okay,
I don't know the full specifics, but I do know that at one point in time, yes, the grizzly bear did get himself into a situation where he shouldn't have been, but, anything can happen when it comes to wildlife. But anyway, it was reported to the authorities that needed to know about it, and they went out there and they released it, and he ran off unharmed.
Okay.
And as far as I know, he's either alive or he has expired at some point in time.
So he went off unharmed. Now, a question on that from one of our emails that I got on this is, the argument was made, in fact, specifically in Judge Molloy's decision. He said, well, due to climate change, bears are not hibernating when they normally would be, so therefore that's why I'm cutting this in half and giving more time for more bears to get to hibernating. Well, one of my podcast listeners sent an email and said, well, isn't one of the reasons, you had mentioned, temperatures have been a little higher than usual. So bears are saying, hey, still got some time yet. Might as well fatten up a little bit more. But one of the my podcast listeners emailed and said, isn't it possible that because the grizzly bear populations have grown so much in Montana, in fact, we are now seeing bears getting as far east as Billings. In fact, I heard one report recently that they were even further east than Billings. So isn't it possible that because of this huge influx of grizzly bear populations, that they're needing to feed a little longer to get fat enough to go hibernate? Would that be a possibility?
Oh, sure. And then you got to look at the fact that, yes, we have far more grizzlies than the objective was under the Endangered Species Act to begin with. They should have been delisted 20 years ago. But then when you get the land that's getting past its carrying capacity, these critters got to move away from one another and go search out some new ground. That's why they're getting farther and farther east and up into Canada and down and more into Idaho, down into Wyoming. They disperse just like people do. People move on for whatever reason. The grizzly bear is doing the exact same thing.
Right.
They're dispersing and they're looking. They got competition for food one way or the other, just like we do.
Right. And one of the things, in fact, for you regular podcast listeners, you may remember this was way earlier this year. I did a legislative update, and I had a couple legislators on, and we were talking about various outdoor issues and updating on what the different legislation is going. And one of them was about the grizzly bear, and that the legislature was strongly considering trying to find a way to allow Montana's FWP to be able to manage the grizzly bear because the populations were just getting too far. And in fact, one of the legislators that we talked to was a biologist prior to becoming a legislator. And he said, hey, I have seen it, and I know overpopulation of grizzly bears can become a very dangerous situation. So what he was kind of explaining is that the federal government, though, he wasn't saying, oh, well, anything on the Endangered Species Act is a bad idea. He wasn't arguing about that. What he was saying, in the case of the grizzly bear, they kind of rubber stamped this thing, and where grizzly bears their populations may still be a little low in some areas where they traditionally would have been. In the case of Montana, not at all. In fact, they're overpopulated. So his thing is, it's better to let each state and those wildlife agencies manage it because they understand their area way better than some bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. Is that kind of what you're hearing too?
Oh, yes. That's pretty much the main thing. You look at, we can go to the wolf and all that. The wolf gets to be managed in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming because they were delisted through Congress, and also thanks to the Simpson-Tester bill in 2011 that made it possible. And the main reason why they have not been able to be relisted in these 3 states is because in that wording, it's not subject to judicial review. And therefore, also to the fact, Molloy really overstepped his bounds on doing this, not only in regards to that, but also in regards to the 10th Amendment, where those things that are not set up and for the federal government to take care of are left to the states. And wildlife management is an item that is best left to the managers, such as the FWP and their biologists and those people to take care of these critters in that operation. And they have just started, of course, with the bill that got passed here earlier this year in regards to the hopes that the grizzly bear does get delisted, then Montana will be able to hopefully manage that as well through the FWP. So they're just, putting together their protocols and all that kind of stuff, just like they did with the wolf. And every few years, of course, then they're going to have to go back and re-update their management plans on that. And of course, Gene Forte did this past year state that, the FWP, I want you guys to get your management plan updated again and all that type of stuff, because that's been a while and everything.
Okay, so now to circle back to our original topic of wolf trapping and that, we've kind of discussed, the whole grizzly bear thing. But so, I think we've established that it kind of sounds to me like they're using, and when I say they, I'm talking about people that really are against any kind of wolf management, against hunting wolves or trapping wolves. So they're using the grizzly bear really as kind of a pawn to stop any kind of population control on wolves. Is that the way you're seeing it? Because that sure's what it's looking like to me.
Pretty much. And basically what the USA has been hijacked by radical environmental groups. It's being used, it's weaponized to mitigate and eliminate uses, specifically trapping, logging, ranching, fishing, hunting, mining, all land and wildlife management. It's a tool that they are using to shut down all uses, and they really do not care about the management of these animals. They don't care. It is all about the power and whatever else, the money that they can possibly get by using their logo, I guess you could call it, is what you would say.
Well, and I guess we can all try to get in their heads a little and find out what their motivations are. But bottom line here is we have highly trained biologists in the state of Montana that do a tremendous amount of work and research, which, by the way, is paid for by trappers and hunters through their licensing. So they do all this research to say, okay, this population of this critter is getting overdone, and that's going to cause problems here and there. So we need to bring that back to balance and so on. So we have all that. And then we have groups, like you were saying, that may actually feel well-intended, but they aren't out in the field doing those kind of things on a regular basis to get it done. So again, that's where, no matter how much love for a particular critter you may have, you really need to leave it to people that's their job. They aren't saying, oh, well, I want to monkey with the numbers because I don't like bears. No, they don't really have any skin in the game that way. Their whole thing is to manage the environment so that everything stays in balance and gets along. Correct?
Basically something like that. It's like our fur bear coordinator, Nate, up there in Helen and all that. He's a young guy. He's from Wisconsin. He is very good at what he does, and he gets in there. He has been doing studies in regards to into the muskrat, into the beaver, into into the wolf and all that kind of stuff. So he's in there doing all this stuff. He talks with the biologists, and they come up with the plans. They come up with the statistics and all that type of stuff. In fact, here recently, they just got done doing one in regards to the wolverine, and it was pretty well, it was pretty comprehensive and all that. And of course, that went back to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And if anybody hasn't been paying attention, the wolverine last Friday was listed under the ESA. So I'm just going to kind of sidebar this a little bit and all that. The wolverine is going to be taking the place of the grizzly bear if that were to be delisted. So they need some kind of a critter in there. That's another critter that is not endangered in any way, shape, or form. But they like to use whatever they possibly can to stop people, from ranchers to hunters, whatever. And anybody that thinks that none of this stuff affects them directly really doesn't understand what is going on with all this litigation. It just ties things up, and at some point in time, it is going to come knocking at your door.
Okay, well, we're going to take one more quick break here, Ed, and when we come back, I want to get into that very issue, because here's where I've received a lot of other concerns from listeners of, okay, wait a minute, okay, I'm not a trapper, but if a judge like Judge Molloy can do that, then could that happen to other hunting seasons or that sort of thing? So let's address that when we come back right after this. I know our regular listeners to this podcast have heard me talk about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer, but for those of you that are new here, let me start with the basics about Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. They are your locally owned Boss Snowplow, CM Truck Bed, and Diamond C Trailer dealer. They offer a wide variety of auto, truck, and trailer accessories and specialize in sales and service of trailers. Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer is conveniently located at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, Montana. Now, let's get into the stuff that truly makes them special and why they are the ones we recommend if you ever need a new trailer, a snowplow, or just need service and or advice. Let me give you an example. They carry the best snowplows on the planet. That's Boss Snowplows. So that way, when you get sick of just getting by with what you have or sick of spending a fortune to have someone else plow you out, you can come tell the folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer about what and where you need to remove snow, and they will help you find the perfect Boss snowplow to get the job done right now and likely for the rest of your life. I'm going to tell you something about these Boss snowplows that just amazes me, but I truly hear about it all the time once someone I know buys one. They always say something to the effect of, you know, Rigger, I never thought I'd say this, and I know it sounds crazy, but I actually have fun plowing snow with my Boss snowplow. And crazier yet, I like it so much, I actually look for places near me that need plowing and ask property owners if I can plow it for them. Gang, I'm not exaggerating. That is the Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer difference. They carry the equipment that not only is perfect for you, it actually becomes part of you. So, gang, don't end up hoping you get the right snowplow, trailer, or truck bed. just go to rmtte.com. Look at what they have, then call them at 406-549-4243. Get all your questions answered, and then go have fun this winter. Thanks to Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Go see them, rmtte.com. That's Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. And we're back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast. Downrigger Dale with you, along with my guest, Ed Hebbe of the Montana Trappers Association. We're talking about, of course, this recent ruling of Judge Molloy's. Sorry, folks, I'm just going to come out and say it. Doing judicial activism here. An unelected person doing judicial activism. That's my opinion. Now, if you disagree, you're welcome to email me, downrigger@montanaaoutdoor.com, and I'm going to read every single email, and I'll open my mind and read your emails. So, is that a valid concern, Ed, that okay, Judge Molloy does this, and if he gets away with it, and we're going to discuss what the possibilities are of appeals and that in a second here, but is it possible then that other groups that say, okay, we don't like elk hunting, so we want you to cut the elk hunting season in half or whatever it is that a possibility?
Sure, everything's a possibility. And in regards to this injunction that was placed here a week ago, they're going to bring in the grizzly bear, and technically what it is discriminatory towards the trapper. What about the people that go out and fish and encounter a grizzly bear? There's been several of those this fall, basically from August until whenever, and especially around on the Yellowstone at the Tom Minor area down there, just north of Gardner. There's been a few that have been ruled self-defense and all that with the grizzly bear.
Yeah.
So we have had fishermen, we have had hunters, we have had people out bird hunting, we have had people out walking and run into grizzly bears and have an incident. We have had more grizzly bears this year that I can ever recall of folks having a run-in with those things ever since the end of August all the way up until recently. And it's like one incident every 3 days has happened. I lost track of how many of these grizzly bears this past year have been dispatched in one manner or another, whether it's through self-defense or FWP had to go out and euthanize, dispatch these grizzly bears because they're causing problems. We have too many anymore, and anybody that goes out in the field that does not carry a firearm, especially during grizzly bear season, which is quite a bit of the year, you are crazy to be out there and not being able to protect yourself in one manner or another.
Well,
they don't call them horbilious for nothing.
Right. Well, if you podcaster listeners recall, I did what I think 2, maybe 3 different podcasts about being bear aware. And that was because FWP said, hey, we are having a real problem here, and we need to train the public up because our grizzly bear population has gotten so large. So I see kind of what you're saying is, so now they start to tally up, oh, well, X number of grizzly bears got euthanized on this river because fishermen ran into it and they had an altercation with them. They had to defend themselves. So we say no more fishing on that river.
Correct, and it's and that's exactly the way that it's not going. They are picking on the trapper. They are discriminating against the trapper because they might capture a grizzly bear in a trap. Like I said, how come we're not bringing in the fishermen? How come we're not bringing in the hunters? How come we're not bringing in the bird hunters? And what about the trail walkers?
That'll happen.
Exactly, because technically that fisherman that was on that river down there doing his thing, he ran into that grizzly bear, and he shot it
Yeah.
fatally, and he has just violated the ESA under the take provision. It's the same thing. But had they gone that way, of course, there would be a larger uprising against this whole thing in regards to Molloy's edict that he pushed out.
Right. So what you're saying, and I got to agree with you here. If they say, "Hey, that worked with Judge Molloy and the trapper, so let's just keep it going here. Let's go see Judge Molloy again and talk about the fact that people that hike in Glacier Park keep having problems with grizzly bears, so let's just say no more hiking in Glacier Park."
Yeah.
And then Judge Molloy could possibly say, "Yep, got a point there." So this definitely could spread way farther than just the trapping industry.
Exactly, and people just don't quite think about that.
Oh, boy.
And it's another issue on that is, what about the ones that get run over and killed on the highway? There's been a couple down there in the same area on Highway 89 this past year. We had one over here on Highway 93. We had one up here on Highway 200 out of Bonner and all that. But we're not shutting down highway travel or vehicle usage on any of these roads.
Oh, but wait a minute. Okay, I see where you're going here. There are a few routes in Montana where it has come up that, we really don't like these semi-trucks going on that route. So what they could say there is, well, they might hit a grizzly bear, so no more semis on this route or that route. Now we're getting into supply chain problems. Oh, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
This has opened up a huge box, and people just really don't understand it. That's why, in all honesty, in regards to this grizzly bear, we need common sense ESA reform, specifically in the redefinition of take.
Okay. So now let's talk a bit about where we're at here. If folks have been following the news, Governor Gianforte, the governor of Montana, was not happy with Judge Molloy's decision and is going to appeal this, or has already, I guess. Where is that going, and is it possible that something could come up to override Judge Molloy's decision?
Well, if it ends up going to the Ninth District Court or whatever, that's probably where it's got to go next. I know that it is going on appeal, and I know that the Montana Trappers Association, through our lawyers, our attorneys, we have taken a lead on this thing. We are not sitting passively and letting this thing, just go, because it is really an unlawful edict, is what Judge Molloy did.
Okay, so there is a possibility maybe of nipping this in the bud, but that's going to be a long road to hoe. So one of the things I want to bring up here is that, this sounds like, this has turned into a big brouhaha where everybody has their axe to grind. And so one is saying, well, I'm, on this side or that side. What we're really talking about, and from what I've heard from the Montana Trappers Association, as well as others, in fact, the governor, who I hope to be having on a podcast here soon, plus on our Montana Outdoor Radio Show, we are asking that he come join us. So be listening for that, because the governor will be stopping by here soon when we can work it out with his schedule. But what we're saying here is that, look, what you guys are saying is, let's just calm everybody down here and let's get back to common sense. We're not saying, oh, let's go trap every grizzly bear we can. We're not saying let's get rid of all wolves. What we're saying is, let's get back to what the original law was, passed by the duly elected people in the legislature, and get back to what we do. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, correct. we elect our officials in this state and other states and nationwide to take care of situations and issues that we cannot do ourselves and all that. But at the same time, they're not always listening to us, and they need to get back to what they're. Let's put it this way: a lot of these people that are far removed from the land, they never grew up in a rural area such as Montana. I live in Deer Lodge. It's a rural area. I know ranchers and all of that type of stuff. They got to manage their herds or whatever it is that they have. They got to manage those. They cannot allow their fields to be overgrazed and underutilized or overutilized in one manner or another. And when that happens, you end up with problems. So they can only have X amount of cows on a pasture at any given time. And this is the same in regards to this. Let's use some common sense in regards to this Endangered Species Act. Oh, which reminds me, I got just a little bit of trivia here in regards to a little bit of history in regards to the ESA.
Okay.
The Endangered Species Act. It was written on a napkin in Washington, D.C. at a bar as a joke, believe it or not. Apparently, somebody got a hold of that during the Nixon administration, and Congress put it in.
Really?
Yeah.
So
and
this was some senators or representatives in D.C. sitting at a bar, etching this thing out, left it at the bar, and somebody got a hold of it, and it became law that way?
Yeah, that's how it became law. I mean, it's a well-natured back then, and it was common sense. But look at the headache it's created. What they didn't put protections in so it wouldn't be hijacked and used against consumptive users and wildlife themselves.
Okay. So, and again, had someone not found that napkin, where we would be is, in my opinion, probably where we should be, which is that each state with their biologists and all that say, yep, we need to control that population because it's out of hand in these areas. And that's really, and that's one way or the other. We need to control it as in reduce it, or it's under threat. We need to control it so that population can recover.
Correct.
Okay.
And trapper and anybody that's trapping, hunting, fishing, whatever, they're out there, they want to enjoy the resource. They're not out there wanting to destroy it or eliminate it in any way, shape, or form. It's called management. You take care of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'll use an example from real life is on my dad's ranch, and that's where I grew up. He would hire trappers to control different types of vermin, to control that on the ranch. And in one case, we did have a problem with a grizzly bear that was killing calves and such. Now, of course, Dad was not happy about that and wanted to just go out there and shoot this bear, but cooled off and said, no, I have to go through the steps. Now, these were not easy steps to go through, but he had to go through, and they got the FWP out there. Everybody, it all worked together, and they said, yep, you have a problem bear. They tried to haze this bear out of the area, did not work, and they ended up having to euthanize the bear. That's the way it works.
Yep, because they get themselves acclimated to a certain area. It's just like where you live in your house in a certain town. You've been there X amount of time. You're acclimated. You don't want to leave unless, of course, you absolutely have to be for one situation or another. It's the same with an animal.
Mm-hmm. So, again, back to the folks that are managing it on a daily basis tend to know a lot more about it than a bureaucratic agency in D.C. So, again, that to me, that's where it makes sense, is if we could get back to this common sense of we already have an agency, a state agency that does that. So you rely on that. Now, if someone says, wait a minute, I think this state agency may be abusing that, okay, well, then they could go and take that, up to the federal level and say, we need a little help here because this is going the wrong way. That's how it works. But to start it the other way in reverse and start it from the federal level and go the other way, this is why we have these kind of problems. That's my opinion.
Exactly, and that's also why we have the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, that those situations that are not left up to the federal government are left up to the individual states, and that's wildlife management in regards to hunting, fishing, trapping, all those type of things. Those should be left up to the states, not some federal bureaucrat or some federal judge that thinks he knows better than any of these people that have gone to school and have taken all these courses and spent the money and the time and the energy to be the managers that they are, to be able to study and take care of these animals that are in their care within the confines of the borders of the state of Montana, for instance.
And a good example is your organization itself, and that is the Montana Trappers. They are regulated by the state FWP that says, okay, guys, we are making this season this length. We are saying the quota is this because our research dictates that's the way it goes. So then trappers have to follow that law. Now, you guys aren't asking to have something increased or changed here. You just want to get back to what was originally established. Am I correct on that, or are you guys looking for a change?
It kind of depends upon the situation and all that. But every year, and the members in the districts and all that throughout the 7 districts and everything, they get together with their wildlife biologists in the spring to go over, we'll say, I'm going to take one here, we'll say the bobcat, for instance, and all that. So the FWP biologists, when a trapper catches a bobcat, they got to turn that in X amount of time because there's a certain quota per district that is set by the FWP and then through the commission with the information that the biologists bring to them. And depending upon the district that you're in, you're allowed, an individual trapper is allowed X amount of bobcats. And if I remember correctly, it's 4 or 5 for those of us in districts 1, 2, and 3 and more out east, and that they're unlimited and all that. But every year we meet with these people and tell them, yes, we can agree with your estimation or your assessment on the bobcat, and we have no problem doing that. Now we've had some quotas dropped here in the past few years just because, well, they're not seeing the bobcats necessarily out there. But then again, that depends upon the weather and whatever other situations are going on. I can take last year. Districts 5, 6, and 7, they had some issues out there, mainly because of weather and people just weren't going out. Also, the fact that the gas and fuel prices cost a little bit more and everything. So people just weren't out doing their thing, and you can't get out there and set your traps. You can't get out there and check them properly when weather is not cooperating. So a lot of people just didn't do that type of deal. And sometimes you meet the quotas in the district, sometimes you don't. That changes year to year. But the trappers in the association, yes, their concerns are taken into account, and sometimes we agree with the biologists and sometimes we don't, and that's okay.
Yep, that's how it works. And just like these environmental groups, they have a quota of how many lawsuits they can file. Oh, wait a minute. There isn't a quota on that, is there?
There is none.
They can just keep going and going and going. And that's the other concern that I guess I see is how much time and effort is getting all boggled into something that already has a solution and a way to solve differences. But because that isn't agreed by somebody else, they can just keep filing lawsuits and tying up our courts. And that's a concern, too. Obviously, Judge Molloy has other cases he has to deal with. So how many of those are not getting taken care of because he's having to deal with these things? It's another thought. So anyway, well, Ed, I want to thank you so much for taking all this time to explain, your side of it, and, not just yours, but the Montana Trappers Association side of it, and for answering some of my questions, and that. Now, obviously, I'm upfront with you folks that are listening. I'm on the side of the Montana Trappers Association on this one. I just think there has been a massive overreach here. That's my opinion. Now, I'm up to reading all your emails, and I know the Trappers Association, you guys do listen out there to differing opinions on that, and I'll put a link to the Trappers Association website. Is that a way that people can offer their support to you or offer their disagreements with you? Is that a good place to contact you folks?
Yeah, that's fine and dandy. No problem at all. The only thing that I ask is if you don't agree with a lot of this stuff and everything, be cordial. Don't be nasty or mean, because those type of emails, those kind of messages, they end up just getting dumped. We don't pay no attention to that type of stuff. No, that's just like anybody.
Sure. Yeah. And that's not the way that you get your opinion across. You get your opinion across with offering well thought and well-based arguments that are civil and that. So, I agree with you. Got to do that. And you guys, you have to do the same thing too. And when one of your members gets a little hot under the collar and out of line, that's where you guys pull them aside and say, hey, cool it off here. We're all here to talk about this. So I agree with you. And same thing, when my email box gets hit with some profane stuff, I sorry folks, I do the same thing. I delete them because, we gotta have a few rules to follow here, and civility is a big one. So I agree. So I'll put the link down there in the podcast description, folks. And by all means, if you have a differing opinion, you're welcome to express that. And I'm always all open, and I am sincere about that. I am always open to hearing all sides of any argument. Anything else that you want to cover before we head out here, Ed?
I can't think of anything too much other than the fact that I appreciate the opportunity to be able to do this here today with you.
Yeah, anytime. I'm more than happy to have you guys on, and I do want to thank the Trappers of Montana for what they do. I think so often we people get confused with what trapping is really about, and so much of trapping is indeed an integral part of helping keep nature in balance. And without you, we'd be in a mess. So, thanks for what you guys do out there, and we'll be in touch with you soon, Ed. Thank you so much for joining me.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it.
And there you have it, folks. That gets you a lot of information and a lot of interesting stuff in this situation. I think it's one we really need to take a hard look on and see what we can do to make this balance out a little better. Feel free to email me if you got questions for me, great, or maybe you have questions for a different agency or for the trappers or for some of the environmental groups out there. By all means, I'm happy to be the traffic director and get them passed on too. So feel free to do that. Until then, thanks so much for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. We'll see you next time here or on Saturday morning live all across the state of Montana on the Montana Outdoor Radio Show. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.